This is the Everyday AI Show, the everyday podcast where we simplify AI and bring its power to your fingertips. Listen daily for practical advice to boost your career, business, and everyday life.
Data privacy and AI aren't always two things that go hand in hand. It's something that I think so many businesses and individuals are worried about when it comes to using different generative AI tools is what happens with my data? We're going to tackle that today with an expert in AI privacy who I'm very excited to have on the show. So if you're joining us live, please take part in the conversation, ask some questions. I think it's going to be a very informative conversation. So my name's Jordan Wilson, and this is Everyday AI. It's a daily live stream podcast and free daily newsletter helping everyday people like me, like you, not just make sense of what's going on in the world of AI, but how we can actually make it work for us. All right, so before we get in our discussion on data privacy and AI governance, let's go ahead and go over what's happening in the world of AI news. So we actually have a couple of things related to privacy and governance. So starting off, Google just announced a new way that they are going to be watermarking AI images. So they obviously announced this a couple months back at their annual conference, but it was just released now, within the last couple of hours, that DeepMind, which is essentially Google's AI specialty arm, so to speak. So this is a DeepMind product, and it's called Synth ID, and it will watermark and label images that have been created with AI. So it's going to be interesting to see how that one plays out. All right, next, the Microsoft president just said that AI needs human control to be safe. All right, so in an exclusive interview with CNBC, Microsoft president Brad Smith warned, and I quote, that AI has the potential to become both a tool and a weapon. So this is obviously something we've heard about before, but if you wanted to check out more on what Brad Smith said, make sure to check out that section in the newsletter. All right. And our third news story of the day, definitely, it might be last but not the least. So ChatGPT Enterprise has been released. So this was announced months ago, and we covered it on the show when it was announced, but OpenAI has released, finally, the enterprise version of ChatGPT, a much more locked down version, kind of geared more toward data privacy. So this is something that OpenAI has been working on for many months. I don't even know what all of these terms mean. It's SOC 2 compliant. That's a certain level of compliancy with data, I believe. So a couple other things, details about this ChatGPT Enterprise. Not everything's been released. So at least right now, there's no price tag on it yet. But we do know it will be faster with no caps or limits on GPT-4 and longer context windows as well. So exciting news on the enterprise front, because I know that so many companies are a little hesitant with their data, and they don't necessarily want to hand it over to OpenAI or some of these larger companies. So what a great transition piece for our experts for today. We're going to be talking AI, privacy, and governance. So I'm extremely excited to bring on our guests for today. So please welcome to the show, Katharina Koerner from the Tech Diplomacy Network. Katharina, thank you for joining us.
Thank you for inviting me. Great to be on the show.
Absolutely. This is going to be a fun one. This is such a topic that I think a lot of people are talking about. But Katharina, if you could just start us off very general, kind of break down this complex world of AI governance and privacy, just kind of so the everyday person can understand. What does AI governance and privacy even mean to the rest of us?
Thank you for that question. Super important question. So I thought I would start with mentioning that we have some globally accepted privacy principles, and which are embedded in many privacy and data protection regulations around the world, which are, by the way, popping up here and everywhere, like just getting more and more. And of course, all of those privacy principles also apply to AI systems in case they process personal data. So which are those? So first of all, we have data quality, for example. That means making sure the data used by AI systems is accurate and reliable. So for example, if you're teaching a robot to recognize different kinds of fruits, if it learns if data it learns from is full of mistakes, for example, calling apples oranges, that wouldn't be very helpful. So second one is data collection limitation. So data minimization is a very important principle. Always use just the data you really need to collect for a specific task and do not gather extra information. So for example, if you have a fitness app on your phone, if it's asking for a location, but it doesn't need that to count your steps, it's not following this principle. Then we have very important principle of purpose specification. That means the data you collect and process as an organization should only be used for the purpose it was collected for. So let's say you sign up for a gaming app. So the email you used that for that gaming app to send you game-related stuff should, of course, not be used to advertise other products. Then we have use limitation. This is meant in that way that you should not use data for anything else other than the original purpose without permission. So you have photos on your social media platform, and all of a sudden, those photos are used for something else. That would be a breach of this principle. And then what is super important, and I think a lot of people are very aware of this, is transparency. This means being open about what data is collected, why it's collected, how it's used. Let's say we order something in a restaurant or we have a recipe. Of course, we want to know which ingredients are used. Maybe I'm allergic to something. So you trust that meal more if you know what was used. And then lastly, I want to mention accountability. If something goes wrong, there should be someone responsible. So those are some privacy principles that also apply to AI systems. And of course, as expected, there are some particular issues on top of that when it comes to AI. So for example, a big issue is the origin of the data that large language models use. The basis for services just as ChatGPT, as you mentioned. And here, usually the data is crawled from the internet, and we have different regulations around the world. It's pretty complex, the world of data scraping. The regulations about web scraping. So in the United States, in general, the law says if information is freely available in the public, businesses can use it. So if you have, if you wrote something on a poster on a public bulletin board, anyone can read it, anyone can use it. Except for when the website says you can take the information, or if it's behind a paywall, or if it's behind your credentials, then you shouldn't. You're not allowed to. But in Europe, on the other hand, any information, if it's public or not, is considered personal information that is protected by the GDPR. So if someone wants to use personal data, they need a good reason and a permission. Like you borrow a book from the library. If you don't ask, it's not allowed. So that's something that is very, very relevant in the context of AI and LLMs. And do you want to? I could go on and on and on.
Well, I think
I don't want to take over your show. So
no. I think just right there, we hit on so many different points that are so important, making sure data is accurate and reliable, only using it for the correct purposes, which I think is super important. But also, transparency and understanding that different countries, have different rules and regulations. I think it's important because I think, even here on the show, a lot of times we're talking about how things impact the US. But, as you see here, Maybrit is joining us from Europe. Val right here with a comment is joining us from South America. So we do have people tuning in from all over, Bronwyn joining us from South Africa. So thank you all for joining and thank you for your comments. But one thing, Katharina, that I wanted to talk a little bit more about is kind of how, companies or even individuals or just us as society, how do we strike a balance between leveraging AI's capabilities, because we always hear about it, and all of the things that generative AI can do or make is so exciting. So how do we strike that balance between AI's capabilities and making sure data kind of remains how it should, which is private, or only the data that we are wanting a company to collect for the purposes? So how do we strike that balance?
Are you still running in circles trying to figure out how to actually grow your business with AI? Maybe your company has been tinkering with large language models for a year or more, but can't really get traction to find ROI on Gen AI. Hey, this is Jordan Wilson, host of this very podcast. Companies like Adobe, Microsoft, and NVIDIA have partnered with us because they trust our expertise in educating the masses around generative AI to get ahead. And some of the most innovative companies in the country hire us to help with their AI strategy and to train hundreds of their employees on how to use Gen AI. So whether you're looking for ChatGPT training for thousands or just need help building your front-end AI strategy, you can partner with us too, just like some of the biggest companies in the world do. Go to youreverydayai.com/partner to get in contact with our team, or you can just click on the partner section of our website. We'll help you stop running in those AI circles and help get your team ahead and build a straight path to ROI on Gen AI.
Well, that's a very, very good question to ask. And I don't know if that's goes too far from like the main topic of your show, but I have done a lot of work and research in privacy enhancing technologies. So that's usually the answer I give. So a whole new field has emerged with like a vibrant startup community. Google is using it, Microsoft is implementing it in their products, something that is called privacy preserving machine learning, and a huge research ecosystem as well. So because it's true that with traditional privacy protections, often the utility of the data decreases. It might even decrease the utility of the data while not even protecting the data very well, which was the first intention. So one example is the protection of personal health information under HIPAA. It's a classic example. So that's the US Health Insurance Portability and Accountability Act. So there are a lot of entities covered under HIPAA. So if you process personal health information, you have to comply with this law. It's a federal law in the United States. And under HIPAA, personal health information should be de-identified for protecting patient privacy. So to support research, reducing risk, promoting data sharing between hospitals so that we can have better insights in this personal health information. And one accepted method for this is so-called, it's a safe harbor method. And that involves that you remove 18 direct identifiers from the data, like name, social security number, medical record numbers, etc. So that law was from the 90s. And they really put this into law because usually law is tech neutral. So they formulate it phrase it in a way that, it can go with time. But HIPAA really said, strip those 18 identifiers from personal health information, then you're more or less good to go. But in fact, you strip so many identifiers for the reason of privacy protection that it is that you lose a lot of information. Plus, it is not even good privacy protection because there are many re-identification attacks that can be very successfully, conducted on this HIPAA protected health data. And so now here is this new ecosystem, these new technologies and approaches that have emerged over the last couple of years that can unlock the valuable insights from the data while protecting privacy. And those are, just to mention a few of them, differential privacy, so differential privacy is kind of, you randomize responses in a data set, so you cannot say 100% is your data in this data set or not. You can mathematically prove that it's not possible to tell if your data was in the data set and contributed to the output, yes or no. Then we have synthetic data. So you build a new data set that mimics the patterns from the original data set, and then you can use it. Or there's something new called, I think it's a very poetic name, homomorphic encryption. It's like, it's on a maturity curve. It's going up, but it means that you encrypt data and you can still process and have conduct computation on this encrypted data without decrypting it. Pretty similar is trusted execution environments. That's a hardware solution where you also have like a secure enclave, and the encrypted data goes in. Only inside it's decrypted and processed and computed upon, and then it leaves the enclave in an encrypted way. Or we have secure multi-party computation. So meaning you can have a common computation and output, but you will never know what was the input. Actually, a classic example is often you can conduct an analysis of incomes. What's the average income, for example, or what's the disparity between female and male incomes, but you will not see what the actual input was. So those are some of those privacy enhancing technologies, and they're politically supported globally. So we have the US National Strategy to Advance Privacy Preserving Data Sharing Analytics. Early this year, I wrote an article somewhere, maybe we can post it or whatever. Like there's so much policy support for those pets because they're so promising, because some of them, as I mentioned, they even protect data in use. So we do know that, protection of data at rest, so securing data when it's stored, that's, state of the art. When it's sent, so you protect data in transit. But some of those new technologies can also protect data while in use, and that's a pretty big thing. So we will get there, and of course, please.
Wow. No, I'm just saying, like, I talk about AI every single day, and I don't know about you all listening and tuning in. I am getting a first-class education right now from Katharina. And like, I have so many notes, and if you're like me, and if you can't keep up with everything, I'm trying to Google things, I'm writing things down. Don't worry, we are going to be sharing everything in the newsletter. But I do have, one more big question, I think, Katharina, before maybe we can get to a comment or two. So if you do have a question, make sure to get it in now. But I want to talk about, because you kind of talked about how data privacy and AI governance is so much different in different countries. But one thing that I think is really going to be on people's minds, especially here in the US, is when we talk about AI's impact on democracy, right? Because I think especially here in the US, we've already seen it, different political groups using AI in probably ways it was not intended to make it seem like a political opponent maybe said something or did something they did not do. So I mean, can you just talk just quickly about kind of the risks of AI just on democracy and how it might influence, public opinion, elections, and even just how we understand democracy?
Yeah, I mean, that's a big concern for sure. And with the help of AI or machine learning, you for sure can aim or try to influence public opinion in elections. So first of all, with election campaigns, for example, you can target specific groups with tailored messages. I mean, that's nothing new, but you can identify, because you can analyze this vast amount of data in such a great way, you can identify potential swing voters or craft messages to really influence the decisions, micro-targeting, so that all leads to manipulation. Manipulation can also be achieved by AI-generated deepfake videos. We had examples where people were already videos were made as if they had made those videos, and that was not those people. You have filter bubbles, more or less. So AI algorithms can personalize content, showing individuals information that only aligns with their existing beliefs. We have, of course, security risks. That's a big thing. So AI can be used by malicious actors to hack into election systems, manipulate voter registration data, disrupt the voting process itself. And transparency and accountability, I think that's also a big topic also in this regard. So the use of AI in elections and public discourse raises the questions: who is responsible for the AI algorithms that influence public opinion? How can we ensure also in this context that AI is used ethically and responsibly in the political sphere? And this is why, in general, also with I'm sure you talked about hallucinations by LLMs or services like ChatGPT, like wrong outputs. I think that education is really so important. I don't know exactly how that works, that AI education will find its way into our public education system. But I recently started an initiative just here for the Bay Area. So any school in the Bay Area that wants me and explain AI to them, like to the kids, I'm happy to do that, because I think that's just so important. Just as we have not every single book, just because a book, it's a good book, right? And it's not always write what it's in that book just because it's a book. And the same is true with actually anything that is on the internet and any output by any system. You can never 100% trust. You should always, use your own, common sense or prove it with different sources. So we have to raise this awareness that we're still self-responsible for content that we get from the internet and from really super cool applications like ChatGPT, etc.
Yeah, absolutely. And I couldn't agree more with you, Katharina, about the need for better AI education in the school systems. Absolutely, because it seems like so many schools, I just had an episode on this recently, so many schools are, shutting it down or not allowing, students to use it when personally, I think that's not a good idea. But okay, so we've covered so many things, but I do hope we can get a question in or two from our audience. So Nancy saying, good morning, glad to be back on the live show. Great to have you, Nancy. Cecilia saying data is indeed one of the most important assets to manage right after our relationships and strategies. Couldn't agree more. So a question here, if you wanted to take this one. So Ben is saying, thanks for the comments. And he's asking, is it realistic to expect AI models to be fully transparent and explainable? I think that's a great question. What would you respond to on that one, Katharina?
Yes. Very good question. So I think for some models or some applications, like white box applications, it is possible. So, the majority of AI is machine learning. So if we have a simple, recommender system, and the model is a decision tree. So, it's really decision tree,
Yeah.
Do you want apples or oranges, and then does it have a worm or not, or whatever? So in the end, you have a healthy apple or whatever. This is an explainable model. Even it already gets a little bit more complicated if you have a simple model that is still tricky, like with a random forest. So you have hundreds of decision trees, and then you compare the outputs of those, or compare them, and you have one model. But of course, we have black box models, and there are many approaches trying to solve the explainability issue, but I do not see that the issue is solved. So I think in the future, or actually already right now, I think we will see more AI-specific applications. Sector-specific applications of AI, so that models are built from the onset on with explainability in mind. So I know, I recently came across one company focusing only on lender decisions and really having this approach from the very beginning on. And this is very natural, a very a foreseeable development, I would say, because we have those principles, privacy by design. So you have to build privacy in the whole architecture from the design phase on, or we have security by design. So now we have responsible AI by design. So you have to build them from the beginning. I think with a lot of models that have already been built, you will probably not achieve full transparency and explainability. So I'm totally with you here.
Wow, what a great response, tackling that from all possible angles. So I think we have time for hopefully one more question here, Katharina. So Maybrit asking, because you talked already about how different countries are handling privacy differently. So Maybrit's question is, do you find a specific country or area more effective in their AI privacy and AI governments? Because obviously, the EU and some other countries throughout the world kind of govern their AI privacy and data much differently than here in the USA, which essentially, at least for now, is self-governance from the largest companies here in the US. So what's your take? Are there certain in your opinion, in your experience, are there certain areas or countries that are maybe more effective at data governance and AI privacy?
Yes, of course, the first thought is the EU has already this golden standard of data protection with the GDPR, and is coming up with the EU AI Act, which will also have extraterritorial effect, because if you will offer your services in the EU, you will also have to comply with the EU AI Act, classifying AI systems into different risk categories, etc. But what is effective? If there's also this concern that
That's a good point. Yeah.
AI Act is so effective that it will actually might hinder help me here with the word, the startup scene, make it more difficult
growth
for companies.
Yeah, it might stop companies from being able to grow fast.
Yeah. So, what is effective? And also, I just wanted to mention, because you said, you talked about the US, you mentioned it. We do already have a lot of regulations also in the US, which apply to AI. It's not that there is nothing here. So we have a lot of sectoral law. There are a lot of state laws now popping up, which tackle AI. A lot of AI issues are also regulated under privacy law. So there's not nothing. It's just so complex. It's like a patchwork. So, more effective, but I think more effective would mean there's legal clarity. So I think if we have one law in the EU and maybe one law or executive order or whatever in the United States on a federal level, that will make it more effective. And I think this will be coming. So this was a kind of, not so clear of an answer, but some thoughts.
But that's such a good point, because one person's definition of effective AI privacy and governance might mean to someone else, stunting business growth, or, keeping companies from fully scaling at the pace to which they might want. So we tackled so many important topics on today's show. Katharina, thank you so much for joining us, because I know we went all over the horn. Thank you for sharing your expertise and knowledge with us all. Thank you so much for joining.
Thank you so much for having me. Thank you, everyone.
All right. And just as a quick reminder, like Val is saying, looking for the newsletter on the topic, don't worry, go to youreverydayai.com, or if you're listening on the podcast, just look at the show notes. You'll find a link there, because we're going to be sharing some of the articles that Katharina mentioned that she wrote. And we had so much in this episode dealing with AI privacy and government. So don't worry, go sign up at youreverydayai.com. So thank you for joining us, and we hope to see you back again for another edition of Everyday AI. Thanks, y'all.
And that's a wrap for today's edition of Everyday AI. Thanks for joining us. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe and leave us a rating. It helps keep us going. For a little more AI magic, visit youreverydayai.com and sign up to our daily newsletter so you don't get left behind. Go break some barriers, and we'll see you next time.